23 members of my family once flew across 15 states just to watch my sister pop a balloon full of pink confetti at a luxury resort in Texas. They chartered flights, they booked matching outfits, they spent nearly $40,000 celebrating a baby that hadn't even been born yet. But 1 month later, not a single one of them could drive 2 hours to attend my wedding. My mother said the trip would be exhausting. My father said they had just finished traveling. My sister texted back with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Maybe next time." Next time. I remember staring at that message on my phone and thinking, maybe they were right. Maybe my wedding really was just a small thing. But 34 days later, my phone exploded with more than 200 missed calls from those same people. Voicemails, messages, emails, all from relatives who suddenly remembered I existed because they had just discovered who my husband really was. And suddenly, that 2-hour drive didn't seem far at all. Before I tell you what happened next, if stories about family betrayal, karma, and unexpected justice resonate with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next story when life pulls you away. Now here's the part none of them knew at the time. The distance was never the real reason they skipped my wedding. The real reason was something far worse. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 31 years old now, and for most of my life, I believed something about me was quietly wrong. Not broken exactly, just less important, less visible. Like the extra chair someone forgets to move away from the table. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, in a 2-story house with white siding and a maple tree that turned bright red every October. From the outside, we looked like a normal American family. My father worked in insurance. My mother ran a small clothing boutique downtown. And my younger sister, Lily, well, Lily was the center of everything. Lily was 4 years younger than me, and from the moment she could walk, people noticed her. She had that kind of presence, bright smile, perfect hair, the kind of confidence that fills a room before she even says a word. My parents loved to say she had star quality. When Lily was 14, she won a regional teen beauty pageant. My parents threw a celebration dinner with 30 relatives at a steakhouse downtown. My mother posted pictures on Facebook for weeks. But 2 years earlier, when I was 16, I won first place in the Ohio State High School art competition. Over 1,200 students had entered. My painting, a landscape of a quiet lake at sunset, hung in the State Gallery for an entire month. The award ceremony was held in Cleveland. My teacher drove me there. I remember standing on stage, holding the plaque, while rows of parents clapped for their kids. I kept glancing toward the back of the room, looking for my mom's blonde hair or my dad's tall frame. But the seats where they should have been were empty. Later that evening, when I got home, I walked through the kitchen holding the award like something fragile. My mother barely looked up from her laptop. "Oh, honey," she said, distracted. "I'm sorry we couldn't make it. Lily had dance practice, and your father didn't want her to miss it." Then she smiled quickly and added, "But we're proud of you." The plaque stayed in my bedroom closet for years. Mom framed Lily's pageant crown and placed it right in the living room. That was the pattern. Not cruelty exactly, just a quiet hierarchy. Everyone understood, but nobody talked about. At family dinners, Lily told stories about her competitions, her photo shoots, her growing social media following. Everyone laughed, everyone listened. When I talked about design projects or freelance clients, the conversation usually drifted away after a few polite nods. My mother used to call my work Emma's little computer art thing. By the time I was 28, I had moved into a small apartment in Arlington, Virginia, and built a steady career as a freelance graphic designer. Nothing glamorous, but enough to pay the bills and live quietly. I thought I had made peace with my role in the family until the afternoon I met Daniel. It was a rainy Thursday in October, the kind where the streets in Georgetown shine like polished glass. I was sitting in a corner coffee shop, sketching logo ideas on my tablet, when a man at the next table asked a simple question. "Are you an artist?" He was wearing a faded flannel shirt and jeans, the sleeves rolled casually to his elbows. There was a paperback book beside his coffee mug and a pair of muddy boots under the chair. I laughed and said something like that. "I'm a designer." He smiled. Same thing he said, just with invoices. That made me laugh harder than it probably should have. We started talking, first about art, then about travel, then about books we both loved. The conversation moved so easily, it felt like we'd picked it up halfway through a sentence that had started years earlier. His name was Daniel. He told me he worked in finance. Not Wall Street flashy finance, just investment work, as he put it. The way he said it made it sound almost boring. He drove an old pickup truck that had a dent in the back bumper and a kayak rack on top. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian place where the owner greeted him like a regular. Our second was a walk along the Potomac River. Daniel never bragged, never tried to impress anyone, and maybe that's why I trusted him so easily. For 8 months, I believed he was simply a kind, thoughtful man who preferred quiet coffee shops to crowded restaurants and long conversations to fancy parties. If I had known who he really was, I might have understood much earlier why my family would one day regret missing my wedding. But at the time, Daniel Ashford just seemed like the calmest, most ordinary man I had ever met. And that was exactly the way he wanted it. Daniel and I dated for 8 months before I discovered the truth about him. And strangely, the truth didn't come from Daniel. It came from my best friend, Nora. Nora and I met during our freshman year at the University of Virginia. She was studying law, sharp-minded and observant in a way that made you feel like nothing in the world could slip past her unnoticed. Years later, she became a corporate attorney in Washington, D.C. And if there was one thing Nora trusted more than people, it was research. One Friday evening, I was at her apartment, the two of us sharing a bottle of red wine and complaining about deadlines. Daniel had just left after picking me up from dinner. Nora had been unusually quiet the whole night. Finally, she turned her laptop toward me. "Emma," she said slowly, "how long have you been dating this guy?" "Daniel," I laughed. "About 8 months." "Why?" She tapped the screen. At the top of the article was a photograph I recognized immediately. The same calm smile, the same thoughtful eyes. The headline read, "Daniel Ashford, founder of Ashford Capital Partners, one of Forbes' most influential young investors." I blinked at the screen. Then I read the number underneath. Assets under management, $1.5 billion. I actually laughed at first. It seemed ridiculous. "That's not him," I said. But Nora simply folded her arms. "Emma, that's definitely him." The room went quiet. My mind replayed everything I knew about Daniel. The pickup truck, the flannel shirts, the quiet coffee shop conversations, the way he never once mentioned money. I drove to Daniel's apartment that night, with my heart beating like a drum. When he opened the door, I held up my phone. "You want to explain this?" I asked. For a moment, he just looked at the screen. Then he sighed softly and stepped aside so I could come in. We sat at the small kitchen table, the same place we had shared takeout dinners so many times before. Daniel didn't try to deny it. "Yes," he said calmly, "that's me." I waited for an apology, or at least an explanation. He gave me something else entirely. When I was 12 years old, he began my father's business. Partners stole nearly everything my family had. I watched people we trusted disappear overnight. Friends stopped calling. Relatives stopped visiting. He paused, and I realized something very early in life. Money changes how people see you. His voice was steady, but but quiet. So when my company finally became successful, he continued, I decided I would never lead with that part of my life. If someone wanted to know me, they would know the ordinary version first. He looked directly at me. I wanted to know if anyone would stay, if they thought I was just a regular guy. The words hung in the air between us. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. He gave a small smile. Because you never asked. And he was right. I had never asked how much money Daniel had. I cared about the way he listened. When I talked, the way he remembered the little details of my day. The way he always treated waiters and strangers with the same quiet kindness. The truth was, Daniel had already passed the test I didn't know I was giving. I stayed, not because of the money, but because knowing the truth didn't change how I felt about him at all. Daniel never told anyone else. Not my friends, not my family, and I didn't tell them either. A part of me, a very stubborn part, wanted to know something. If my family ever truly supported me, would it be because of me or because of who I married? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 3 months later, Daniel proposed. It was a cold morning in early February. We were walking along a quiet overlook at Great Falls Park, watching the Potomac River crash against the rocks below. There were no photographers, no dramatic speeches. Daniel simply took my hand and said the words every woman hopes to hear. Emma, will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a deep blue sapphire, surrounded by small diamonds. To anyone who understood jewelry, it was extraordinary. To my family, it probably looked nice. That evening, I posted a photo in our family group chat. My hand resting in Daniel's, the river behind us. I wrote 3 simple words. He asked. I said yes. 14 minutes later, my mother replied, That's nice, sweetheart. Then she sent another message. Lily just finalized the plans for her gender reveal party in Texas next month. Everyone should save the date. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My engagement announcement had lasted exactly 1 sentence before the conversation returned to Lily. But even then, I still hadn't learned the lesson my family was about to teach me, and I definitely hadn't learned the one they would regret the most. After Daniel proposed, I tried to keep things simple. I never wanted a huge wedding. No ballroom, no orchestra, no extravagant production that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I only wanted something small, peaceful, and meaningful. So I chose a vineyard in the Virginia countryside. Willow Creek Vineyard sat on a quiet stretch of rolling hills about 2 hours from my parents' house in Ohio. In early spring, the trees there begin to bloom, and the ceremony arbor overlooks rows of vines that seem to stretch forever toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. It felt calm, honest, exactly the kind of place where you could promise someone the rest of your life without distractions. We sent out invitations 3 months before the date. 23 invitations went to my family. Parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, my sister Lily, and her husband Mark. 2 weeks passed. No replies. I told myself people were just busy. 3 weeks passed. Still nothing. So I started calling. My father answered first. He sounded uncomfortable before I even finished asking the question. Your mother thinks the timing might be difficult, he said carefully. Difficult? I asked. It's a 2-hour drive. He hesitated. Well, everyone just traveled to Texas for Lily's event. People might still be tired. Texas. The gender reveal party. I had almost forgotten about it. Lily had rented a luxury resort outside Austin for the weekend. There were catered dinners, a live band, and a balloon release filmed by drones. 19 members of my family flew there. Some came from the West Coast, others from New York. My mother even organized matching outfits for the reveal itself. Pink dresses, gold decorations, a cake that reportedly cost more than my monthly rent. Everyone had attended. Everyone except me. I had a client deadline that weekend and couldn't make the trip, but I congratulated Lily anyway. I liked every photo she posted online. I thought that was what sisters were supposed to do. Now, as I waited for RSVP cards to come back for my wedding, the answers started arriving, one by one, and every single one said the same thing: declined. My Aunt Linda wrote that she was exhausted from traveling to Texas. My cousin Rachel said a weekend trip to Virginia was too far. My sister Lily texted me, "Emma, I'm 5 months pregnant now. Traveling again would be really uncomfortable, but send pictures." Even my father sent a short message the week before the ceremony. "I'll try to make it work." He didn't. The morning of my wedding arrived with clear skies and soft spring air. Daniel's family filled the front rows early. His parents had flown in from California. His brother came from Chicago. Friends from college and work filled nearly every chair on his side of the aisle. 30 seats, every one of them taken. On my side, the rows looked very different. 6 people, 3 college friends, Nora, 2 former co-workers from my first design job, and 24 empty chairs. The wedding planner quietly approached me before the ceremony began. "Would you like us to move some guests over?" she whispered gently, "so it doesn't look so uneven." I looked at those empty seats for a long moment. "No," I said, "leave them exactly where they are," because I wanted to remember that moment. Daniel found me standing near the arbor 10 minutes before the ceremony. He noticed the empty chairs immediately. Then he took my hands in his. "Emma," he said softly, "their absence isn't your failure." I tried to smile. "It still hurts." "I know," he said. Then he added something I didn't fully understand at the time. "One day, they'll realize exactly what they missed." The ceremony itself was beautiful. The wind moved gently through the vines. The sun dipped low behind the hills. Daniel's mother read a poem about loyalty and love. When we said our vows, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness, clarity. For the first time in my life, I realized something important. The people who truly loved me were already there, and the ones who weren't had made their choice. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from the family group chat. Lily wrote first. "So, how was the little wedding?" My mother followed. "I'm sure it was lovely, sweetheart. Send photos when you get a chance." No apology, no explanation, just polite curiosity. As if my wedding had been a small weekend hobby. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I started saving every message, every declined RSVP, every text, every excuse. I created a folder and gave it a single name: receipts. At the time, I told myself it was just for clarity, but deep down, a small part of me already suspected something. Because life has a strange way of balancing things out, and the people who skipped my wedding were about to need something from me very badly. For almost 2 weeks after the wedding, everything was quiet. Daniel and I settled into our routine like nothing unusual had happened. We went back to work. We cooked dinner together in the evenings. On weekends, we walked along the river or visited small bookstores in Georgetown. If my family felt any guilt about missing my wedding, they never showed it. The group chat continued exactly the same as before. Pictures of Lily's pregnancy updates, messages about baby names, photos of nursery decorations. My wedding was never mentioned again. But then slowly, the first crack appeared. My brother-in-law, Mark, had always liked to present himself as a successful real estate developer. Expensive watches, luxury cars, the kind of confidence that sounds impressive at family dinners. He was working on a large condominium project in Virginia Beach, 40 luxury units overlooking the water. According to Mark, the project was going to make him a fortune. But construction projects have one small problem. They require money, a lot of it. And sometime in early April, Mark's project ran out. The bank financing the development demanded additional capital before they would release the next phase of funding. Mark needed new investors, quickly. So he did what many developers do when they're desperate. He started contacting private equity firms. One of the firms his business partner suggested happened to be a company called Ashford Capital Partners. Neither Mark nor my family had any idea who ran that firm. At least not yet. About 3 weeks after our wedding, Mark's partner was preparing a pitch presentation. Standard procedure. Research the investment firm. Learn about the executives. Understand their portfolio. He typed the company name into Google. Then he clicked the first result. The company website opened. And right at the top of the page was a photograph. A man in a navy suit, standing confidently beside a window overlooking the Washington skyline. The caption read, "Daniel Ashford, founder and CEO." Mark's partner stared at the screen. Then he slowly turned the laptop toward Mark. "Isn't this the guy from your wife's sister's wedding invitation?" he asked. Mark leaned closer. His face went pale, because the man smiling confidently from that corporate profile photo was the same quiet man who had sat 3 feet away from him at the gender reveal party in Texas. The same man he had casually dismissed as a day trader. Within minutes, the phone calls began. Mark called Lily. Lily called my mother. My mother called my father. And suddenly, after 31 years of barely noticing me, my entire family remembered my phone number. The first message arrived that afternoon. "Emma, honey," my mother wrote, "we've been thinking about you. We should have dinner soon. We'd love to spend time with you and Daniel." Lily followed minutes later. "OMG, Emma. Why didn't you tell us? Daniel was such a big deal." Then Mark, "Emma, I think Daniel and I got off on the wrong foot in Texas. I'd love to buy him a drink and talk business." The messages kept coming. Aunts who had been too tired to attend my wedding suddenly wanted to visit. Cousins suggested family gatherings. Even relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years were sending warm messages about reconnecting. By the end of the evening, my phone showed more than 60 unread texts. Daniel sat beside me on the couch while I scrolled through them. He didn't say anything. Finally, I looked at him. "Do you think any of this is real?" I asked quietly. Daniel considered the question carefully. Then he answered with the calm honesty I had come to trust. "I think they're responding to new information." That was a very diplomatic way of saying it. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at my apartment. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, holding a gift basket from an expensive kitchen store. She hugged me immediately. "Oh, Emma," she said warmly, "I've missed you so much." Her voice sounded sweet, almost theatrical. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Her eyes moved quickly around the apartment. Then she smiled. "So tell me," she said casually, "what exactly does Daniel do in finance?" There it was. No apology. No mention of the wedding. Just curiosity about my husband's job. For a moment, I studied her face. And in that moment, something inside me became very clear. She hadn't come to see her daughter. She had come to meet a billionaire. I walked to the front door and opened it again. "Mom," I said gently, "you didn't come here because you miss me." Her smile tightened. "That's unfair," she said. "Is it?" For a few seconds, we simply looked at each other. Then she picked up the gift basket and walked out. From the window, I watched her walk across the parking lot. And sitting in the passenger seat of her car, waiting, was my sister Lily. They hadn't come for a visit. They had come for a negotiation. But the truth was, they were already too late, because something much bigger was about to happen. And this time, it wouldn't happen in private. About a month after my wedding, Daniel received an invitation to speak at a charity gala in Washington, D.C. The Henderson Foundation hosted the event every year to raise money for education programs in underfunded public schools. It was one of those formal evenings where the city's business leaders, investors, and nonprofit boards all gathered under one roof. 400 guests, black tie, a ballroom filled with people who had the power to move millions of dollars with a single conversation. Daniel had been selected to receive the foundation's leadership award that year. When the invitation arrived, he showed it to me over dinner one evening. "You don't have to come if you'd rather skip it," he said gently. "These events can be exhausting." But I smiled. "No," I said. "I'll come." What I didn't tell him was that I had a feeling my family would somehow hear about it. And sure enough, they did. A week before the gala, Nora called me. "You might want to know something," she said. "What's that?" "Your parents just purchased a table at the Henderson Foundation event." I wasn't surprised. The table cost $5,000. Apparently, driving 2 hours to a vineyard had been too difficult. But spending thousands of dollars to sit in a ballroom with my husband, that was suddenly very manageable. The night of the gala arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes Washington feel almost magical. The event was held inside the National Building Museum, a massive hall with towering columns and golden lights reflecting off polished marble floors. Daniel wore a black tuxedo. I wore a simple dark blue gown. As we walked inside together, people greeted Daniel constantly. Business leaders, investors, old colleagues. Everyone seemed to know him. Everyone wanted a moment of his time. Then across the room, I saw them, my parents, Lily and Mark. They were seated at a table near the back wall, scanning the room with the anxious expressions of people searching for someone important. They hadn't seen us yet. For a moment, I simply watched them. The same people who couldn't drive 2 hours to attend my wedding were now sitting in a ballroom filled with strangers, hoping to speak with my husband. The host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "please welcome this year's Henderson Leadership Award recipient, Daniel Ashford." Applause filled the room as Daniel stood. He walked to the stage calmly and adjusted the microphone. His speech lasted only a few minutes. He spoke about opportunity, about responsibility, about using success to create something meaningful for others. Then he paused, and finally, he said, "I want to thank the person who reminds me every day what real loyalty looks like." He looked toward me. My wife, Emma. The spotlight shifted. 400 people turned to look in my direction. As I stood, I glanced toward my family's table. My mother's expression had frozen. Lily's mouth hung slightly open. Mark looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. After the speech ended, Daniel and I stepped away from the stage. Within seconds, my family began moving toward us. My mother arrived first, arms wide open. "Emma," she exclaimed, "we are so proud of you." She leaned forward as if to hug me, but I didn't move. "Hi, Mom," I said calmly. She hesitated. Then she quickly recovered her smile. "Oh, sweetheart, we've missed you so much. We should all have dinner soon. Daniel and Mark have so much to talk about." There it was again. Not one word about the wedding, just business. I looked at her quietly. "You couldn't drive 2 hours to my wedding," I said. "But you drove all the way here tonight." The words hung in the air between us. Mark stepped forward nervously. "Emma, listen. I think there's been some misunderstanding. I'd really like to discuss a business opportunity with Daniel." I reached into my small clutch purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It was a printed screenshot, one of the messages Mark had sent Lily the week of my wedding. I handed it to him. His eyes scanned the text. The color drained from his face, because the message read, "Why would I waste a Saturday at Emma's little ceremony?" I turned to my mother, and this I said, holding up another page, "is the message you sent, telling everyone not to bother coming." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Daniel stepped forward beside me then. His voice remained calm. "Mr. Carter," he said to Mark, "your company submitted an investment proposal to Ashford Capital 2 weeks ago." Mark nodded quickly. "Yes, exactly. That's why we were hoping." "I'm afraid the proposal has already been declined." Silence fell. "The financials didn't meet our investment criteria." Daniel continued evenly. "It had nothing to do with Emma." Mark looked like he had been punched. My mother tried one last time. "Emma," she said desperately, "we're family." I met her eyes. "You chose which family to show up for," I replied quietly. Then Daniel took my hand, and together, we walked away. When you step back and look at a story like this, it becomes clear that what happened to Emma wasn't really about a wedding. It was about value, not the kind measured in money status or social media followers, but the quiet value of showing up for the people who matter. For many years, Emma believed she was simply the background character in her own family, the extra chair at the table, the person whose achievements were politely acknowledged and then quickly forgotten. And sadly, this kind of story is not uncommon. Family dynamics often create invisible roles. One child becomes the star, another becomes the responsible one, and sometimes someone becomes the person everyone assumes will always understand, always forgive, always wait. But life has a way of revealing truth when the circumstances change. Emma's family didn't suddenly rediscover their love for her when they learned about Daniel. What they rediscovered was opportunity. And that difference matters because genuine love shows up before success arrives. It shows up at the art competition when the seats should be full. It shows up at the small vineyard wedding when the chairs are waiting. And it certainly doesn't appear 34 days later when someone realizes the person they ignored might now be useful. In psychology, there is a concept called conditional attention. It describes a relationship where affection appears only when there is something to gain. Status, money, access, advantage. But the moment those benefits disappear, so does the attention. Healthy relationships work the opposite way. The strongest families, friendships and marriages are built on what experts call consistent presence. It's not the grand gestures that matter most. It's the simple act of being there, again and again, even when nothing exciting is happening. That is why Daniel's words during the gala were so powerful. Success isn't measured by what you build. It's measured by who stands beside you when you have nothing. Emma eventually understood something that many people take decades to realize. You cannot force people to value you. You can only decide how much access they have to your life. Boundaries are not revenge. They are clarity. And sometimes the bravest decision a person can make is simply stepping away from the table where they were never truly welcomed. Now, if this story made you reflect on your own experiences, you're not alone. Many people listening right now may recognize pieces of their own family dynamics in Emma's journey. And if stories like this resonate with you, stories about human behavior, family relationships, and the quiet lessons life teaches us, consider taking a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people discover these stories, and it allows us to continue sharing meaningful narratives that might help someone else feel a little less alone. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone only showed up in your life after you became successful, or after something valuable appeared? If you feel comfortable sharing, you can tell your story in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful lessons don't come from experts. They come from people who have lived through the same experiences and found their way to peace on the other side.